Welcome to Bigfoot and Paranormal Encounters podcast. And now your host, Dave Weichert.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bigfoot and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Give me a second here. I'm going to set something up, and then we're going to bring our guest in. All right, got that set. All right, tonight's guest is going to be Mr. Randy Liebeck. I hope I said that right. If not, he can punish me. So let's go bring Randy in. And before I do that, his bio is down below me in the ticker. So let's go bring Randy in. Hi, Randy. How are you, sir?
Hey, Dave. Great to see you, man.
It's been a pretty good day. I'm diabetic and my sugar's been running low all day. I've been trying to kick it back up there a little bit, but hopefully I'll be all right. I can get, not real bad, but I can get disoriented and trip over my words once in a while when my sugar's low like that. But I want to thank you for your service. That's the first thing I want to take care of. And I want to thank you for being a guest this evening. And let's go ahead and start. Randy, what inspired you to become involved in the paranormal?
I'm not one of these people who had an experience in their childhood and then went on, always fascinated with it. I never, to the best of my knowledge, I did not have any childhood paranormal encounters. Maybe one, which is really nebulous and really doubtful. But in general, just as I was learning how to read, when I was 5, 6 years old, learning how to read, like kids all across the world, I would read whatever was available in the house, whether it was the back of a cereal box to read about Captain Crunch's latest adventures, or a magazine or a book that was in the house. And my grandmother subscribed to a magazine called Fate magazine, which has been around since 1947, 1948, and it's the world's longest running magazine about the strange, unusual, paranormal. So that was what I was around the house during my formative years when I was learning how to read. So the first stuff I was exposed to as a kid were reports, supposedly true reports of ghosts, hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, the full range. So the interest bit me, the paranormal bug bit me very early on. And as I got older, and I would go to the library, get books on parapsychology, Hans Holzer's books on ghost hunting, and the interest just continued lifelong. And then eventually, folks, friends, and coworkers knew of my interest in the field, and they would come to me occasionally and say, "Hey, Randy, my neighbor is having strange things happening at their house," or a police officer tell me, "Hey, there's this house, on Maple Street where old lady Wilson lives, and strange stuff happens there, man. You want to come check it out?" So that's how I gradually got involved in doing field investigations, and the interest and the field work has just continued nonstop since then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. Sightings. My most favorite TV show back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
And just not too long ago, we had Mike Burns and Mr. Al Rober on from Sightings. That was a pretty good show. You were a writer for the show?
Not a writer. I was a consultant behind the scenes advisor. Al Rauber was their primary ghost consultant for the show. They would reach out to me when Al was not available. And I worked, I fielded phone calls every couple of weeks, bouncing cases off of me, bouncing phenomena off of me, asking for opinions, asking whether they thought they should do a show on the reports. They a couple of times they flew me out to locations to do the initial analysis. I would go out there with a camera, a video camera, record the witness statements, then write up a report to sightings whether or not I thought this would make a good show or not. So a couple of times I did that. My recommendations were no, this is not going to work out. Once or twice, my recommendation was, yeah, this could work, but logistics were that the show could not be done on those sites. And I think I did out in the field on shows that actually were produced and aired. I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4 different shows that was on site, different places around the country where they flew me out. Sometimes on camera as a consulting field investigator. Sometimes behind the scenes, largely for fraud detection and prevention purposes. One show which I was involved in, but not on camera. I was an investigation at Avenel, which is in Virginia, and it was Robert E. Lee's childhood home, and it had been reported for forever for being haunted. The White Lady of Avenel was the resident ghost. So they did a show on that, and we were out there filming for a few days. And I was behind the scenes, interviewing people for the show, but not on camera. Other episodes, I was actually on camera as a spokesman. But the key thing is I got paid for all of it, so it worked out for me.
Interesting. Now, being a law enforcement officer, when you do paranormal investigations, do you find yourself always picking the do you always find yourself picking it apart? Yeah.
Yes, but that's not because of my background in law enforcement. Any credible, conscientious paranormal investigator should pick witness statements and reports of phenomena apart to try to falsify what's being reported and see if it stands up to critical thinking and critical analysis. And whether or not you're listening to someone give a witness statement in a police interview room, or whether you're listening to somebody give a witness statement at a allegedly haunted house, the process is the same. You're looking for inconsistencies. You're looking for patterns which may or may not coincide with the historical phenomenology of these type of cases. Certain things we have found do actually happen at haunted or poltergeist infested locations. Some things that are reported we think only happen in horror movies. So we're looking to hear what people say and pick it apart, but not. We don't handle a paranormal investigation like we're interrogating a suspect. We have to be much more diplomatic, more friendly. But yeah, the BS detector radar is always revolving. I know that the popular term on these ghost hunting TV shows today is debunking things. Oh, we went in and we debunked this or tried to debunk that. I'll tell you one thing with my background in law enforcement, the term debunk, the root word in that is bunk or bunkum or bunko, which refers to intentional fraud. Police departments used to have what was called a bunko squad, which were the fraud detectives. We still have that, but we don't call it the bunko squad anymore. But the term bunko, bunkum, and debunking specifically refers to catching out people who are lying and committing fraud. And that's not really what you're heading out intending to do on a paranormal investigation. Yeah, some stuff is fraud, some stuff is exaggerated, but lots of times what's being reported could be a misinterpretation, an exaggeration. Somebody seeing a non-paranormal or natural phenomena, which they don't understand, and they process it and report it as being paranormal or anomalous. So we're trying to apply critical analysis to these cases, but we're not going in assuming the reports are fraud. So therefore, we're not really debunking. I think that's just a poor choice in terminology.
Okay. As far as paranormal gear, I pretty much got out of ghost hunting in 2016. Um, but there seemed to be a lot of new technology as far as equipment and stuff like that coming out in the field. And there's a great bit I didn't work with. I was old school. So, what do you think of the paranormal gear that's available today?
I have. I'm being torn apart in two different directions on that because I have two very conflicting opinions. One, uh, I think that we should apply all new technology to anomalous or paranormal field investigations because we do not know what the core phenomena we're dealing with is. We know that we're dealing with symptoms. If you have a haunted house or a poltergeist case, yeah, there are a variety of theoretical models about what might be behind that, but they're models and they're theoretical, actually hypothetical. So we do not know what the core phenomena is. We assume there is some sort, in some cases, there's some sort of energy being manifested and manipulated in the environment. Not all cases. Some cases we think this is largely occurring inside the mind of the witness, and there may or may not be any external phenomena in the environment. But some cases we think it is. So the logical assumption is there's some sort of energy transfer and application at work. We don't know what kind of energy that is. So we don't know what type of equipment may or may not capture that or document it. So throughout the history of paranormal research, going back to the 1800s and earlier, whenever new technology was developed, it started out, people would put salt or baby powder on the floor to see if footprints or the sounds of crunching salt granules would appear when a ghost or a fraudulent hooligan would walk across it. When cameras were invented in the 1800s, photo technology was applied to haunted investigations. Later on, audio recording was applied, trying to get direct voice phenomena, real sounds, or trying to get EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, which is paranormal sounds, which are not heard but show up on the recording media. Later on, infrared technology was applied. Electromagnetic field detectors were the staple of ghost hunting TV shows like Sightings back in the 90s. And I certainly use that equipment. Thermal imaging, temperature tracing devices, ranging from initially, a mercury thermometer now to fast reacting digital, very high tech thermometers. I fully support the experimental application and use of all of this stuff and any new thing that comes out. So that's one side of it. I think it's great to use technology because you don't know what works until you try everything and find something that works. My the other side of my thought process on this is the caveat that so far we've not really found anything that works. With one or two possible exceptions, I am not convinced that a ghost can be photographed. In a poltergeist case, if an ashtray is flung across the room, if the camera points at the right place at the right time, you should be able to capture the physical ashtray flying across the room. And a couple of times, very rare, but in a few cases, that seems to have been captured on film. With electromagnetic field detectors, ranging from the cheap junk like the K2 meter, which is very popular in the pop culture ghost hunting world. It's popular because it's cheap. Uh, not a very reliable device, ranging from that to a tri-field meter, which is a higher end device, then up to stuff which costs actually thousands of dollars, uh, which is very, very detailed in detecting variations in the magnetic field. From all of those, we've not seen consistent uh, usefulness out of it. Uh, Back in the 90s, everyone was using it. I've used it. I still have the equipment, so I still use it. Uh, Back in the 90s, people were picking up weird fluctuations and weird variations in the local magnetic and electrostatic fields. Some folks unfortunately assumed, hey, there's a ghost standing here, and the evidence did not support that. But in some of these cases, maybe something anomalous was being detected, some effect caused by the core phenomena. But interestingly, over the decades, there have been fewer and fewer positive responses from magnetic field detectors. Why? Why do these things actually seem to be getting some good results initially, but now they don't? The same with thermal imaging. I back in sightings a couple of times on field investigations for them. We used very expensive, very high end, first generation thermal imaging equipment, Inframetrics, Agima. These were the devices that cost $50,000 and had to have a built-in cooling refrigeration system to keep them cold for them to work. Uh, there were a number of cases where we got very interesting, seemingly anomalous. I'm not going to say paranormal because we can't prove that, but we got some images which we could not explain. Other researchers, other colleagues of mine, Lloyd Auerbach, captured an apparent apparition on thermal imaging for one case he did. Uh, Now the technology is miniaturized; it's more affordable. You can get a FLIR thermal imaging camera that attaches to your iPhone or your Android phone, and it is much more sensitive, much more effective than the $50,000 units we had back in the 90s. Uh, but we're getting fewer and fewer interesting images on this technology. We got these images back in the 90s, early 2000s, not so much now. Why? I'm starting to wonder if maybe whatever's behind the core phenomena, whatever's active in the haunting, whatever's active in the poltergeist case, adapts to the equipment, becomes aware of its use, and is able to apply countermeasures to evade being detected by it. That's supposition. I'm just brainstorming. I have no evidence for that, but those thoughts cross my mind when folks are applying technology. And it never was 100%. You could never walk into a supposedly haunted house with any of this equipment and be guaranteed with getting anything recorded. And a lot of the stuff people got recorded was not paranormal. They just assumed it was. But sometimes, yes, I think. But it was hit or miss. I mean, one case, two cases out of every 20 back when we got stuff on this equipment. Now, I think it's less than one time out of 20 you're getting something. That being the case, I am reluctant personally to go out and spend a lot of money on the new, latest, greatest technologies, because I've spent enough money on the stuff I have already, and it's not giving me great results. The same with ionizing radiation detectors and uh, ion detectors, Geiger counters and ion detectors. Back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, several investigators, myself included, my colleague William Roll, had gotten interesting results from Geiger counters, including picking up higher than normal gamma radiation bursts in certain cases. And in certain poltergeist situations, in any location, in your house or mine, there's going to be a normal level of background radiation, which is always there. It's part of nature. Some investigators have found, not me, but some of my colleagues have found that when a poltergeist outbreak occurs, while the phenomena is occurring, the normal ambient background radiation dies down to zero. Something is smothering it out. So we noticed those effects. Those effects were real. It was promising. We were fascinated that, hey, maybe we have something now which is going to give us some degree of information or some answers about the core phenomena. Uh, so everybody, parapsychologists and parapsychological field investigators, began using Geiger counters, just like they were using EMF meters and infrared and thermal imaging. And then when everybody starts using it, we don't get those results anymore. So either we were very seriously mistaken and misjudging what we thought we were seeing originally, uh, or we were actually getting those results, but now it's not happening. I know one of the latest technologies out there is structured light system cameras, SLS cameras, which are based on a video game concept. I have severe issues with that, with the technology and how the investigators think the technology is working, because I don't think that what they think is what's actually happening. But I still support, if somebody wants to go out and spend the money and buy the equipment, go for it, because you never know. Uh, it's you try everything, including the kitchen sink. You throw it against the wall, you see what sticks. Most of this stuff does not stick, but you're not going to know what might stick unless you try it. So I fully support the use of equipment. I would just warn my fellow field investigators, do not have high hopes, do not count on results, do not expect them. And most importantly, if you get what you think is an aha moment on some of this equipment, whether it's audio, video, other imaging systems, okay, maybe yeah, maybe no, but don't run out and tell the world, oh, you captured a ghost on an imaging system. Apply critical thinking, critical analysis, try to falsify that, what the amateurs would call debunk it, and make sure, because over 9 times out of 10, these strange images on film or on video or on imaging systems turn out not to be a quote unquote ghost.
Right. Okay, now this next question, before I ask you the question, I just want to give you an experience that I had at a location called Fort Mifflin. I was in one of the casemates, and I was taking photos and just walking around and doing some EVPs and stuff. And I happened to look at one side of the room, and I noticed there was this white glowing object about the size of a major league hardball. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was sitting still. Then it started moving. Then it sat still. And when I looked at one of my members, there was 3 of us in there. I told him, I said, "Turn around and look and tell me what you see." He turns around and OMG come out of his mouth. That was the first thing that come out of his mouth. He goes, "Wow." So I started snapping photos, and of course, I think it was out of maybe 7 or 8 photos. None of them had the object that we were both seeing with our eyes. Now, when we brought it to the third person that was in the room with us attention, he didn't see it. He wasn't seeing it. I personally, in the second person, watched it go across the room and go through the wall and just vanish, disappear. So my question, what do you think of orbs? What's your theory on that?
My theory on orbs, people do see with I catch myself. I almost said see with their eyes, but you did not see it with your eyes. And I'm going to explain to you why you didn't. But people have sensory or extrasensory experiences of seeing orbs. I have a friend and a occasional co-investigator who sees orbs similar to what you saw in locations, which I don't see, which cannot be captured on film or video. But we're talking about orbs that just show up on digital cameras, whether it's digital still cameras or digital video cameras. The classic orbs, little balls of seemingly illuminated light with a surrounding membrane around the outer edges, and then a pockmarked surface in the center, which looks like craters on the moon. And sometimes people say they see a face in that pockmarked center. Uh, and there are issues with that, but there's an explanation for it. Those are universally. I don't want to say 100% because when you say it always, never 100%, you always wind up, with that one white crow embarrassing you. But 99.9% of all those classic orb photos that show up in digital imaging, uh, they're not paranormal. They're not anomalous. They are dust particles or raindrops surrounding a core dust particle. And we understand how that works. We understand what causes it. And we understand how that shows up in photographs. But when something is seen by you or I in front of us, and that's relatively common, that's not a dust particle, and that's not a raindrop. But I will say this: the fact that two of you saw it, and to your observation, you were seeing it with your eyes, but the third person in your party looked and did not see what you're seeing. That is prima facie evidence. That's telling us right up front that whatever it was, you are not seeing with your eyes. Because if the two of you were having light reflected off that object or being generated by that object, and that light was going through your eyeballs and bouncing off your retina and triggering your optic nerve and sending that visual signal to your brain. If it was a light reflecting or light generating object, everybody in that room would have had to have seen it. The fact that the third person did not see it tells us that, yeah, you and your other friend were sensing it. You were visually processing it, but it was not through your eyes. It was something that was being generated directly in the image sensory part of the brain. Technically, we call that an hallucination. But I'm not using hallucination in the style of somebody's crazy or somebody's on drugs and they're seeing things. It's just something paranormal, something anomalous was there, and it was triggering that sensory perception directly in your brain. The third person, for whatever reason, was not getting that psychic signal to their brain. Same thing happens when you see classic apparitions. When people say, they see the ghost of the lady, in the white dress standing in the corner. You can have 3-4 people standing there. 2 or 3 of them will go, "Hey, do you see that white lady, standing in the corner there, where nobody should be?" And 3 will see it, and the 4th one will go, "Dude, I'm staring right at their corner, and there's nothing there." Well, yeah, there is something there. Something's triggering the response of the first 3 people, but it's not. You wouldn't be able to photograph it, just like you were not able to photograph or videotape the orb that you saw, because it's not a physical light reflecting or light generating object. And the cases that I'm familiar with, and the cases I've been involved with, where people did see an orb, and they look different. They look different than what shows up in all these millions of photographs on the web. They look larger. They look self-luminous. They do not have that membrane border around them. They just they appear to be a totally different phenomenon, and they're usually larger. Sometimes considerably larger. When people see that, and I have to put "see" in quotation marks because I do not think the eyes are being utilized in this, but what they see generally cannot be photographed. And the images, the orbs, quote unquote, that do show up in photographs or in video, universally are not seen by anybody. So it's 2 separate things, with a couple of very rare historical outlier cases which go against that. One that comes to mind, 1974 Culver City poltergeist case, the Doris Byther poltergeist case that was investigated by the UCLA parapsychology lab, Dr. Thelma Moss, Barry Taff, and Carrie Gaynor. In that case, people saw balls of light, multiple balls of light, i.e., orbs, saw it with their eyes. They thought it was with their eyes, and these light balls were zooming back and forth all across the room. Well, they were taking photographs. Most of the photographs and they were taking film, not video back then, but movie film they were using. For the most part, these balls of light that people saw did not show up, but in 2 or 3 photographs that were snapped out of the thousands of photographs, uh, the moving balls of light did show up. So, and I think those photographs are authentic. So I think you have an outlier case there where people saw the orb, and the orb was actually orbs were actually photographed. But intriguingly, only 2 or 3 shots out of thousands. Uh, so why? Why did the other 999 shots at the generally the same time period, all pointed at the same luminous phenomena? Why didn't they all get it? So something is going on, which is beyond our ability to completely comprehend. The phenomena, so I think, is real. I may come across as being very skeptical, but skepticism is the appropriate mindset when we're looking at things which are anomalous, outside of what science tells us should happen, but I think do happen. But we do need to approach it skeptically rather than being gullible. And lots of people, I think, are too gullible. So I may sound skeptical, but I am a skeptical believer. Believer is a bad word, because the term belief, its core usage implies faith. If you believe in God, it's a matter of faith, no matter what the physical evidence may or may not be. So really, belief is not a term that should be used when we're talking about do I buy the existence of paranormal phenomena? But belief is the pop culture accepted term. So yeah, I believe in paranormal phenomena based on the totality of the evidence. But I am also very critical, very skeptical of any individual report, any individual photograph, any individual video clip, including the thousands that are on YouTube of supposedly paranormal stuff, because it's still very rare. Not very rare to experience. People experience this stuff all over the world throughout recorded history. The experiences share a common set of denominators, whether you're experiencing it in New York City in 2023 or you experienced it in Ethiopia in 1634. The core phenomena that are experienced are the same, which in itself is evidence that there's an underlying reality to this. So it does happen, but the ability to capture, photograph, video, very, very rare. It does happen, but it's very rare. It's rare to the point that when you go on YouTube and you look at the thousands and thousands of supposed ghost videos, ghost photographs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have to assume that the vast majority of those are either fake or non-paranormal phenomena, which the person who saw or recorded just did not understand. So I'm a skeptic, but I also accept the underlying reality behind these core events.
Okay. Over the years, being a paranormal investigator, what would you say was your best experience as far as a sighting, an apparition?
I've never seen an apparition, and that would be the holy grail for any paranormal investigators to see the classic ghost appear in front of you, or in a poltergeist case, to see the ashtray lift up and fly across the room in front of you. Uh, I've never seen that. I have colleagues who have seen that, and I am convinced they did see it. This stuff does happen, and sometimes you're at the right place at the right time. Sometimes you're not. Other times, the investigator or other people at the location can be an inhibitor for the phenomena. Some researchers would have stuff happen around them any case they go on day after day. Barry Taft, Dr. Barry Taft, is one of those people who are a phenomena magnet. William Roll, he would do his poltergeist cases. He would witness poltergeist events happen in front of him. Other people are phenomena inhibitors, and this is a well-known, documented, and written about phenomena in parapsychological research. I think I am an inhibitor. I think you do have to have a degree of psychic intuition, psychic sensitivity, and poltergeist and PK events. You need to have a little bit of psychic extroversion, where you can stuff will happen in the environment around you. I'm as psychic and as sensitive as a brick. I've gone to locations where I think stuff was happening, where my colleagues, my co-investigators, were having stuff happen in front of them. I show up, stuff stops happening, and I'm looking for it. I want to see it. I want it to happen. It does not. When I give up and go up, I tried my best, and I leave. 4 minutes after I leave, I get the phone call. Dude, the stuff started kicking up. The moment you left the house, and I believe it. I'm using that bad word again, but I'm convinced that actually does happen with me and certain other people. The encounters I've had where I actually did experience something were primarily not visual. They were tactile. I felt things. I've felt a presence, for lack of a better word. I knew something was manifesting in a room next to me in the dark. It caused me to have a subjective sense of fleeting terror. Came across me because something I just knew appeared in the room with me. I felt that in more than one case and location. I have heard and a poltergeist audio phenomena. I've been in locations where people say you hear the pounding and rapping and scratchings in the walls, which are classic early stage poltergeist manifestations. I've encountered that, heard that, to the point where the sounds, which were initially inside the wall, left the wall, and you could hear the sounds generating in the open air, in empty space, right around my head. They were no longer coming from the walls. So I've experienced that. Did not get a audio recording of it, unfortunately, and it's a complicated case. And the fact that I did not get an audio recording, I think there's some possibly paranormal reasons behind that. And I'm curious. I'm curious if I was able, to get the recorder turned on in time and try to record those sounds. I'm curious if they would have shown up on the tape recorder or on the digital. Well, back then it was an analog tape recorder I was using. Right. But I'm curious if those sounds could have been recorded, or whether those sounds were psychic, like the glowing orbs of light that some people see, but they cannot get a picture of. So I've experienced that, and I've seen one where I'm convinced was a poltergeist psychokinesis event at a case I was working, where a lady called me and said that her child's toy car was chasing her around the room. And I got there the next morning with some other investigators, and we on video. We had her with the car, and the car was it was a battery powered car, but it would you put it lay it down on the ground, it would run towards her. She would move away from it. The car would maneuver, go back towards her. We put the car upside down on the kitchen table and turned all of our cameras and monitoring equipment on it. And what we observed was uh, every time she was discussing this toy car, and she would gesture to it while she was talking to us on camera, she would gesture to the car and go, oh, the car this, the car did that. Every time she would gesture to it with her hand, but her hand was still 2 to 3 feet away from the car, so she was not touching it. When she would gesture to the car's wheels would start turning. The battery motor would start running. Every time that would happen, we had an ion detector set up in the room. Every time, about 1 second, 1 to 2 seconds before the car would start moving, we would detect an ion burst. Not at the moment of movement, but again, immediately before. So we'd get the alert on the ion detector, and then right after that, the motor and the wheels will start running. The car, we put it on a kitchen table, dining room table, and we're discussing this, and we were observing every time she gestured towards it or referred to it, the car would start moving, and it kept rolling off the table. So we had to turn it upside down on its back so it would not roll off the table. Then I noticed that the car, which was again had it was battery controlled. The front wheels could steer. They'd be turned to the left, turned to the right while she was talking about it. So I tried an experiment. I said to the woman, I said, "Hey, tell the car to turn to the left." She'd said that, and when she'd say turn to the left, the wheels would cut to the left. I say, "Hey, tell the car to turn to the right." She said, "Hey, car, turn to the right." Car turned to the right. We all saw that happening right in front of us, and we have it on video. So that is to me was significant. There's always the potential for fraud. There's always the potential that there was some magician, playing a trick on us, or there was a culprit hidden in the closet with some, remote control device doing this. But we made a very thorough effort to rule out those possibilities. So that to me, there was no gateway to hell opening up in the basement. There was no levitating, refrigerator. There was no, lady in white, apparition appearing. But as a parapsychological phenomena, I'm convinced we witnessed and captured on video psychokinetic activity. And I also think that the haunting, because we were called in for a haunting case, I think that woman's subconscious psychokinetic ability was to some degree, at least partially, behind the haunting. So that was significant to me. And again, other things, I've never gotten a photograph that I think was paranormal. I've gotten photographs that when I first took them and first saw them, I went, whoa, I have something here. But then on closer examination, again, applying critical thinking and analysis, I was able to falsify that assumption. And it turned out, no, these were not paranormal. These were natural, non-anomalous phenomena, which just looked strange. And I was able to explain what it was. I've never gotten an audio recording on EVP, electronic voice phenomena, the capturing of sounds which the ear does not hear, but which show up on the recording media. A lot of probably most lay field investigators use EVP research, and some of them that's their primary approach and their primary technology they use. 80% plus of the results that these folks are getting, at least the ones I've heard, I'm not convinced it's what they think it is. I'm not convinced it's anything anomalous. And I'm certainly not convinced, and even in the cases they think are anomalous, and I have heard EVPs, which I think were likely of paranormal origin, that there's They show up. Nothing was being said by anybody. We're pretty sure it's not a stray radio signal. It's being picked up somehow. And it appears to actually be a human-like voice speaking. But it's so garbled or so nebulous that it could be saying A, or it could be saying B, or it could be saying C. So when people have their interpretations, oh, don't you hear it saying this? Generally, I don't hear what they think it's saying. Yes, I will acknowledge, yep, it's saying something. But I think a lot of people imprint their own expectations, their own beliefs, and their own assumptions onto the interpretation of their EVPs. And again, I've used EVP. I've used audio recording. In most cases, I've worked over the decades. Standalone analog tape recorders, standalone digital voice recorders. I tend to use video cameras, both analog, tape, and digital, which also includes an audio recording component. I've never gotten anything on any of my equipment, but I've been standing right next to co-investigators, standing 3 feet away from me, using their own equipment, and they've gotten Class A EVPs. Where there was no voice, there was no sound at that location, but it shows up on their recording device, but it doesn't show up on mine. Again, that intrigues me. Again, that's telling me there was no actual sound in the environment. There was nothing vibrating the air, causing sound waves through the microphone of the recording device. Something was being directly imprinted on some of the recording devices, just not mine. Just like some people will see a ghost or see an orb, and the other people in the room won't see it because it's being imprinted directly into their brain, or in the case of equipment, being imprinted directly onto the recording medium. So I do think that some people do get legitimate, anomalous, very hard to explain EVPs. I just haven't. And at this point, I'm pretty much assume I'm not going to get it, so I don't waste a lot of time trying to get EVPs. I will run a video camera, and there's an audio track. So if something anomalous shows up on audio or on video, well, I have the camera; it's running. We'll see what happens. But nothing's happened yet. Again, that may be because I am a psi inhibitor. There's something about me which causes in Star Trek terms, it causes a dampening field, which prevents the phenomena or dissuades the phenomena from occurring, which is a very bad trait to have if you're a paranormal investigator and you're going out, all over the place, specifically trying to experience stuff. And then over the decades, it looks like I'm preventing it from happening. I will say this, though, over the decades, and I've been doing this since the late 80s in the field on field investigations. Over the years, over the decades, I think I'm becoming more and more sensitive to picking up things. A few things have happened in recent years that did not happen, to me 20, 30 years ago. So either the ghosts are getting used to me and are starting to come out to play on occasion, or my neuropsychological processes, which generate this dampening field, are starting to die out a little bit in my old age. So,
Okay, in a few minutes, we're gonna look at some photos you sent me that you said you would be able to explain. I believe I did put them in the exact order. But I want to ask you this question: have you ever involved yourself in an exorcism case?
Nope, that's not my ballywick. There are. It's hard to draw a fine dividing line between what we experience and what we expect to see in poltergeist cases. to have a fine line between that and a demonic infestation slash obsession slash possession case, because some of the core phenomena start out the same. You look at the 1948 Maryland case that the book and the movie The Exorcist were based on. Uh, the In the actual case and the early stages of the movie, the core phenomenon that was presented was realistic. It was poltergeist type activity. Then in the supposedly it went on to become more religious, supernatural, demonic in nature. But in the beginning stages, you can't really tell the difference between one person's poltergeist case is another's demonic obsession case. I'm open to any possibility. And I'm not going to be one of these people that say, "Hey, can't happen. It's not real. No such thing as obsession, infestation, possession," because I don't know. Uh, so I'm never going to say never. I will say, from my mindset and my approach, which is parapsychological, there are alternative explanations which do not rely on religion or the supernatural uh, uh, as a lens to look at these things through. Uh, some cases, the phenomena does take on a possession-like persona, uh, including the Mount Rainier exorcist case that William Blatty wrote the novel about. I'm not sure if I'm not sure how much of that was the power of suggestion. That if this kid who was experiencing poltergeist activity in his home, at his relatives' homes, at school, and at a hospital later on, the core phenomena was poltergeist phenomena. But when the Catholic Church got involved, the priest said, "Oh, this is a demon." And the demon, and demons work in three stages. First, they infest your location. Then they try to obsess you and influence you. And then the end game is possession. And if the priests were telling this kid that, I'm wondering if the phenomena then assumed that persona, maybe because it was a demon, or could it have been because it was the power of suggestion? And the kid who might have been generating the poltergeist phenomena himself through recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, maybe he subconsciously modified the phenomena to take on that persona which the priest expected to see. I think that's just as possible as any other explanation, but I don't know. I'll say this: I am adventurous. I am curious. The paranormal is my passion, but I'm not stupid. If I came across a case which it took on the persona of something demonic, or I thought somebody was becoming possessed, whether it's psychological phenomena or whether it's supernatural phenomena, I'm going to back out of it for a couple of reasons. One, for the mental health of the percipient. That should be dealt with by professionals, whether it's medical, psychological, or clergy. And I'm neither of those three. And then also just self-preservation, because God forbid if there is something beyond a ghost or beyond psychokinesis, beyond my capability to fully understand, that's not a place or a person I want to be around for my own safety. So I would evacuate myself diplomatically and politely from the case. But I've never actually encountered that. And frankly, none of my colleagues have either. I read about this stuff and I see it on TV shows. And I guess it's probably happened. Again, the Mount Rainier case happened, but not happened around me. So.
Okay. All right, listeners in the chat room, chatting with Mr. Randy Liebeck. Did I say that correct?
You said it correct, and I applaud you because 9 times out of 10, people don't say it correct.
Okay, I cheated a little bit. I'm sorry. I saw where it said LEE dash where it's separated. So
I do that for the benefit of talk show hosts, so they can
right.
see how it's pronounced.
Well, I used it. So, if you have a question for Randy, please feel free to ask him a question. And when you ask a question, please include your name in with the question, like Mr. Shango did when he said Mike Shango is here. For some reason, well, Facebook anyway. Uh, if you are listening from Facebook, have to give permission for your name to be shown. But if you put it in with the question, it'll work out just fine. So I just wanted to let you know if you have a question for Randy, feel free to ask. All right. Let me see here. Okay, why is it not moving? Here we go. Ah, there we go. All right, I'm going to pull up this first photo. These are the photos that you sent me that you said you would explain. So I'll go ahead and put up the first one, and then there's one to follow a second.
Okay. I was talking about getting photographs that seem strange, and the initial assumption of a lot of people is, oh, I have something anomalous, something possibly paranormal captured on this photograph. This case, this is in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This was at the Cashtown Inn, which is a bed and breakfast that's been around since the Civil War, and is has a reputation of being a very haunted building. And this room I was in has the reputation of being the whole building is haunted, but this room is the most haunted room. So I got access to it and was taking photographs using a 35 millimeter not digital, 35 millimeter analog SLR, snapping these photographs. Did not, since it was a film camera, I did not see the images until I got home and developed the film. And I caught this image. Now, this little thing in the right lower corner, this little swirl, back in the 90s into the earlier 2000s, there was an entire made up phenomena focused on that. It was called a vortex. And you would see hundreds of photographs on the internet, people showing their vortexes. Fate magazine did an entire article about vortexes captured on film, and there were researchers, alleged researchers, and paranormal enthusiasts is a better word, who developed phenomenology about these vortexes. They say, "Oh, a vortex appears. That's the pathway that an entity enters into our reality from the other side." And you see this loop. It's always a loop shape, and it's always glowing, and it's always kind of slightly transparent. And this you can see the bottom stripe of the comforter going. You can see it through the vortex. And sometimes you can actually see a matrix, a circular swirling formation in these vortex photos, which these enthusiasts would say, "Oh, that's evidence of an energy swirl, from the other side, getting ready to manifest what's going on." A very interesting phenomenology. And here's right outside that room, you see the same basic shape in the right-hand corner. When the vortex thing was popular in the paranormal enthusiast community, I was aware that it was nonsense back then, because in those photographs it was camera straps or the wrist strap on a small 35 millimeter camera, and the wrist strap or the larger camera strap would momentarily dangle in front of the camera lens, be illuminated by the flash on the camera, which caused it to be out of focus and glow white. And that's what these shots were. And the swirling matrix of energy patterns you would see, that was just the cloth, a repeating cloth pattern that the camera straps were made out of, and it could be duplicated. You could experimentally duplicate that exact same shot by dangling a camera strap or loop in front of your camera. But when I developed those two photographs, I was intrigued because there was no camera strap on my camera, no strap, no wrist loop, no anything. There was nothing dangling in front of the camera. So I'm sitting there going, wow. I'm in Gettysburg, a haunted city. I'm at the Cashtown Inn, a haunted hotel, and I'm at room number whatever it was, which was the most haunted room. And this shows up. So for a few moments there, or longer than a few moments, I was really second guessing my opinion that this is not paranormal. Those vortex images did not show up on any of the other photographs, but I was using interchangeable lenses. And when I went inside the building to take photographs of those rooms and that corridor, I had to put a wide angle lens on the camera to capture that full image. So I'm sitting there examining the lens, and lo and behold, on the camera lens, in the bottom right corner, corresponding exactly where that image is on the two photographs, I found an almost microscopic piece of lint, a little piece of microscopic, almost a hair or thread that was in that exact same shape. It was minusculely small, but that's what it was. That little piece of looped thread, which was stuck on the lens element of the camera lens, was there. And when the flash went off, the flash reflected off the wall surfaces and illuminated that little microscopic thread. When I removed the thread, I cleaned the lens, the effect never occurred. So again, it's the importance of applying critical analysis and trying to falsify what you think you've captured. I would have loved for that to have been something paranormal. An actual, vortex, which I don't think exists. And I was sure it wasn't, but, that caught me off guard because what I had assumed, these are all camera straps, and I didn't have a camera strap. So that one took me for a loop. And if I did not, very carefully examine the glass lens element on the lens and say, what's that? And pull out a magnifying glass. And I went, aha. If I didn't go through that process, I might still today be talking about, hey, here's this image that might be paranormal and I cannot explain it. But I can explain it. Right. And what's important is that when people get images like that, again, this was not a random location. This is not in my house. I was at a haunted hotel outside a haunted room and inside a haunted room where, of course, I'm psyched up. I'm expecting and hoping, not expecting, but I'm hoping to capture something anomalous. So when you go through the trouble of, going to a place like that, you bring all of your expensive equipment, and then you get something kind of strange like that. Understandably, it's going to be human nature to say, aha, finally, I caught something. But, sometimes you actually have to second guess yourself.
That's right. All right. Here's the next one.
Okay. Also, different trip, but still Gettysburg. This is the Sachs Covered Bridge in Gettysburg, or outside the outskirts of Gettysburg, which is a paranormal hotspot. People see apparitions. People see Civil War soldier formations marching through that bridge. I think it's a legitimately haunted hotspot. However you want to define the term haunting, and that's a nebulous term with various explanations depending on the circumstances. But I think anomalous phenomena is experienced there. Again, this is a 35 millimeter film shot. Did not see it until I was back home and developed the film. And you see these little arcing light formations. And okay, and I'm intrigued. If anybody remembers or watched the movie from the late '90s called The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment, and the kid, he can see dead people. There was a scene where his mother had a bunch of photographs on her wall, and all photographs with the kid Cole. And in one scene, she's after the strange stuff is happening, she stops and looks at some of these photographs. And in every photograph of Cole on the wall, there are these luminous arcing light formations surrounding him. And what they put in the movie, which is a fictional movie, looked very similar to what I captured in this shot. So again, I'm thinking, this could actually be something paranormal. This is not light. This is not a camera strap. This is something very strange, and it was beyond my experience. So I'm thinking this is very unusual. But then I take the extra step. I need to critically examine and see if I can falsify that assumption. I got the 35 millimeter negative strip that photograph was taken, and I found that on the negative, when it went through the processing machine at the film developer, it got crunched and crumbled going through the machine. And where you see those little arcing light streaks, those were actual creases in the 35 millimeter negative. And when they printed the negative onto paper, those creases printed as these light arcs. Again, though, it looks spooky. It looks paranormal.
Does.
And again, I was at a specific location with a history of paranormal phenomena. So again, it was a very easy assumption, and thank goodness I examined the negatives, and I would always examine negatives, but thank goodness I did. I worry that some people, might not go to that extra degree of analysis, and for me, it's a matter of self-preservation. When I first printed that photo or had it printed for me, I really thought, hey, this might really be something anomalous. This might be, the first paranormal image I captured. I thought that was, wasn't going to swear to it, or bet my life on it, but I thought it was quite possible. But I did not run out, tell my colleagues, tell my friends, hey, I captured, ghostly lights at Sachs Covered Bridge, before I would, do that and wind up embarrassing myself when it turned out to be not true. I made sure if it was true or not, and didn't put myself in that, would have been an unfortunate position of having to take back, what I said.
Okay, let me pull up this next one here.
Another trip. This is more recent. This is just a few years ago. This was also Gettysburg. This was up, I think it was Little Round Top, but don't quote me on that. This was with a thermal imaging camera, and we're up there, and two of my co-investigators were standing by a boulder, looking over the cliff, looking out over the fields of Gettysburg. And I was just experimentally snapping some various shots with the thermal imaging camera, because at this location, and in fact specifically by that boulder, people had reported seeing the apparition of a Civil War soldier. So that's why I was snapping the thermal imaging shots. And as I said, there are two of my female colleagues standing in front of the boulder, looking over the cliff. To the right, the viewer's right, that is, I'm horrible with names, but that's one of them on the right, and then Barbara to her left, two of them. But do you see the third figure standing to the left of Barbara? There were not three people standing there. So when I saw this, and this showed up immediately on the camera, so again, I'm going, wow, there is a glowing, which implies heat, either body heat or some other kind of heat, a humanoid shaped figure standing next to Barbara and Sylvia. Sylvia's on the far right, Barbara in the middle, and then someone who is not there on the left. Again, another shot. I'm going, hey, this is. I cannot explain this. This appears on the surface to be anomalous, and I'm at a haunted location where an apparition has been sighted. But the more and more I looked at the photograph and enlarged it and blew it up, uh, the third glowing humanoid figure to the far left looked to be a duplicate of Barbara in the middle. So I sent the image to FLIR, Forward Looking Infrared, which is the company that make the thermal imaging. I asked their technicians to look at this and explain to me what was going on. And they responded within a day. Technician goes, "Oh, you have multiple lens elements in this camera, and one of them is out of calibration, that lack of calibration is causing duplication of the objects." So on the far right, you have Sylvia. Part of her is duplicated in the camera and is superimposed on top of Barbara. You can't really tell that except under close magnification because it's almost perfectly merged with Barbara. But then Barbara's image is duplicated to her left, which appears to be the third party. So we had the actual technicians who made the camera explain to me what was going on. They said, send the camera back to us. We will recalibrate it. Send it back. The camera no longer has the apparitions showing up. So it was a lens calibration problem. But on first look, when you look at that and you know there are only two women standing there, it looks like there's a third person there. And again, at a haunted location, at a specific haunted spot where people have seen an apparition. So again, one of those things I went, wow, there's a very good chance I captured something here finally. And I shared the image with the folks who were there with me on the investigation. But once I found out what it was and had, not just a skeptic saying, oh, that's not a ghost, that's this. It was the actual technicians who explained to me the exact process and showed me what I could look for in the image to show that it was a lens calibration issue. And then they fixed it. So again, thankfully, I only shared that with the folks who were with me at that site. And I did not send it out to the paranormal community at large and go, oh, look at this ghost I captured. So again, the importance of critical analysis.
I like that because, yeah, over the years, as a paranormal investigator myself, I'd see a lot of people just jump on it. And, they would say, oh, that's definitely a ghost. Well, that was just not me. I would, just like you said, I would take everything home and I would examine it and I'd pick it apart and go over it. That's how I, did things. Now, I think this next photo is a part 1 and there's a part 2 to it. Let's see.
Okay, this is also Gettysburg. And unfortunately, the resolution on the screen is not as good as the original image. But again, using a thermal imager, this was we were in the triangular field, which is one of the very haunted spots on the Gettysburg battlefield that I've experienced definite anomalous phenomena in the past. And we were there. I was with the Ghost Research Society, which is a group out of Illinois led by Dale Kaczmarek, who is one of the country's, one of the world's top ghost hunting experts. And I was filming this investigator. And while I was looking through the imager, I observed, I hope you can see it on the screen here, but there are these dark blue vertical figures to the left of the person. The person is generating body heat, so they're alive. So their heat signature is yellow, deep red. To the general background, and there's a rock right in front of him and behind him. The rock had absorbed heat from the sunlight earlier in the day, so the rock still retained heat, and that's why that rock is yellowish. But the surrounding environment, which is this grass and weeds, is a medium shade of blue because it's cooler. But then to the left, you see these very dark shapes, which are oval, vertical shaped. And watching through the camera lens on thermal imager, I saw these shapes materialize. They rose up from what I saw, what I perceived through the camera, was these shapes which were not there initially. They started forming, started rising up from the grass, and you can make out the grass in the image. And these images got taller and taller, and looking through the lens, looking through the viewfinder, it looked like humanoid shaped figures forming, possibly rising up from behind the grass and standing up. And I'm watching this through the camera, and then I said, "Hey guys, take a look at this and tell me what you saw." And when you're not looking through the camera, you just saw the grass. You didn't see any of those dark blue images. Everybody saw it through the viewfinder of the thermal imager, and then more kept popping up. First, it was 1, 2, 3, and it started popping up. And again, my pop culture, the thought went through my mind is, my God, this looks like people, maybe Civil War soldiers, or the ghosts thereof, who are crouched down behind the tall grass and the weeds, who are now standing up. And if you enlarge the image, you can make out, a roughly shaped torso, roughly shaped what looks like it could be shoulders, and what could be heads on some of those. So again, couldn't see anything with our eyes. And again, this is a still shot, so you don't see the apparent movement, but looking through the viewfinder, you saw these things rise up and look like they stand. And to the right behind the living person's, the investigator's shoulder, you see a couple of the images there right behind his shoulder. Watching through the camera, it looked like those figures, looks like there might be 2 or 3 figures directly behind his shoulder. They moved over closer to the other shapes, dark, cold shapes, and physically moving. I saw that, and we all saw that through the viewfinder. And I'm thinking, my goodness, do I have images of ghosts? Who are a phantom regiment of soldiers who are assembling at this spot. Didn't know. Hopeful, had my fingers crossed. Then I don't know if I have a second photograph from that series.
Yes.
Hi. This is, again, it depends on the resolution of the screen that people are looking at. But now all the figures have coalesced tightly together in one spot. And if you can make out, there's a brighter blue, which is the ambient background, and darker blue vertical forms, which all seem to come together. And some of them initially appeared to be further out. And again, you couldn't see anything with your eyes. And we're watching this. It looked like these figures were coming together, and then they're all standing completely vertical. This is, I've tried specifically to falsify this. And again, I'm not going to say it's paranormal. None of the other equipment gave any readings, and we tried to do a correlation of experiences and equipment readings. So if somebody says they see or feel something, then we want to see if we can get a reading on a device or a recording or an imaging device or an EM meter, and see if those readings correlate with the person's experience, seem to be connected. We had no experiences, we had no other equipment, and we had a variety. We had Geiger counters, EM meters, uh, audio recorders going. Nothing else showed up weird other than that those vertical figures, which appeared to seem to just appear in the field next to us. I've not been able to duplicate that effect anywhere else using the thermal imaging camera. Uh, when I go back to Gettysburg, and I'll be going back next summer, I'm going to bring the same camera, go to that same spot, and see what happens. I'm thinking one possibility, which might be an explanation. There was brush, there were tall weeds, tall grasses. Some of them were different species of weeds. You might have one type of weed here, then a couple patches, other types of weeds, different reflective surfaces, different density. They may have retained different degrees of heat from the earlier sunlight, which had warmed up that boulder and made the boulder glow yellow. So it's quite possible that those dark vertical figures were not ghosts, and I have to assume most likely they were not anything paranormal. They could have very well been different types of grass, which you couldn't really discern in the dark with your eyes, and the clarity of the thermal imaging camera is not the greatest. It might have just been colder patches of grass and weeds, which showed up darker blue because they were colder. But again, the everything else involving that imaging, it looked like they were moving, looked like they were standing up, looked like there were a couple of stragglers off to the right, which came and coalesced with the core group in the front. So I'm still intrigued by that. So I'm presenting it, in all honesty, as saying I just don't know. I most likely, if I have not had anybody from FLIR examine that shot or those two shots yet. Most likely, I'll just be told it's a difference in temperature, and the camera shows darker images for colder spots. But that's not going to tell me, okay, but what was it? Was it a colder, patch of grass, or was it a colder ghost? So I just don't know. So I'm throwing that out for people to take a look at, see if anybody has any thoughts or opinions. I'm still intrigued. I'm not saying it's paranormal. I'm not saying those are ghosts, but I'm still intrigued because I have not been able to explain it yet. This is another shot, and this is a classic orb. This was a seance I attended in New York City, a speakeasy that Mae West used to hang out at back in the 20s. And the place is supposedly still haunted by the ghost of Mae West. It was one of her favorite spots, and she's still seen there to this day. So we had a seance trying to contact Mae West. The guy who's standing up, leaning over the table on the right, that's Chris Fleming. Chris Fleming is a well-known psychic and medium and TV show host. He was leading the seance. To the left, the viewer's left of Chris, the gentleman wearing the necktie. If anybody is from the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, that's Joe Franklin, who is a famous personality in the New York City TV broadcast industry. So we're having the seance. I was there working for a TV show because we were filming it, and my job was just to be an observer. To make sure there was no fraud committed. If something did happen, if something apparently anomalous showed up, I was there to be the voice of reason and the fraud detector. And if something happened, to provide the perspective on camera as an experienced parapsychological field investigator. Well, while we're doing the seance, the folks sitting in the circle said they felt something frigidly cold moving around and swirling around their lower legs and their ankles under the table. So I was with the film crew in the background. I went up and got on my hands and knees and went under the table, trying to see if I could feel anything, and if I did, to see if we were being scammed, if somebody had some floor vent and the cold air was coming through it or something. I felt what they described. I felt a swirling, cold mass of tightly defined air that was swirling around. I put my hand under the table and I feel it going around my hand, in between my fingers. Uh, then somebody else say, "Oh, it's behind my knees now," and then they would the field of coldness would leave my hand. I would reposition myself and put my hand behind that person's knee, and I would feel it again. And there were no vents. There was nothing blowing air. There was no air blowing. Just cold ambient air patches that were moving. Uh, but they were cold enough that people could feel it through their pants legs, through the clothing of their pants. So something strange was going on. So I got up and I snapped a picture. This photograph was taken immediately after everybody was saying that, oh, they felt this cold spot, and I had gotten back up. I snapped the photograph. You got Chris Fleming standing up on the right. You got Joe Franklin to his left with a necktie. Then there's a woman in black to the left of Joe Franklin. Look directly above her head. There's a floating, glowing ball of light. That is a classic digital photograph orb. That is not, even though we're in a interesting place at an interesting time, I do not for a moment suppose that is anything anomalous or paranormal. That is a dust particle that was illuminated by the flash on the digital camera. If you do a close-up, and in one of these pictures I tried to enlarge it, that's a close-up of the orb. That is a classic digital photograph orb, which has that membrane, the outer membrane surrounding it, the pockmarked surface in the middle. So many thousands of these photographs have been posted. People say, "Oh, that's the spirit. That's the ghost. That's what spirit energy looks like in its natural form." Until it turns into a humanoid shape, or somebody psychically interprets it as a humanoid shape. No, I am 100% convinced that any orb photo that looks like this, again, nothing was seen. Nobody saw anything there with their eyes, showed up on the photo. I am convinced that is a dust particle that was close to the camera lens and was illuminated by the flash on the camera. There are orbs and light formations which are not that, and some of them may be anomalous. I think some of them are. But this particular shot was a classic dust orb, an imaging artifact. But I can understand, when I showed the picture to some people, some folks got really excited because we were not just at a McDonald's somewhere. We were at a haunted restaurant doing a seance to contact Mae West. We had felt an anomalous moving cold spot, and I snapped a picture, and this showed up. But I am convinced this object on the film, or on the digital imaging device, it's coincidental. Yes, we are at a haunted spot when something paranormal may have been occurring, but that orb I don't think is connected. If somebody can ever prove me otherwise, I'll entertain the difference of opinion, but it looks exactly like thousands and thousands of other photographs that I'm sure are dust particles. And in fact, in another photograph coming up, I'm going to prove to you that they're dust particles. It's not this one yet. This is another. This is me with a fellow investigator named Joshua Warren. Joshua was a North Carolina-based paranormal investigator and author who currently, I think, is out in the Vegas area. And if I'm wrong about where he is now, he'll hit me with something heavy. But I was interviewing him for Ghost Magazine that I was a columnist for at the time. And we were at a haunted brew pub in Asheville, North Carolina. So again, we're in a haunted location. We're talking about ghosts, and he's even holding Ghost Magazine in front of him. And up above my left shoulder, floating above a hanging light, you can see another little classic orb. And again, it's easy. I can see the thought process. Oh my goodness, you're at a haunted spot, two paranormal investigators talking about ghosts, and then you have that orb appear again directly above my left shoulder, up towards the top of the photograph. But again, if you were to enlarge that, it looks exactly like the other one. It is a dust particle.
Okay.
The location and the context of who was there, what we were talking about, I'm convinced is purely coincidental. Now, this is my apartment that I used to live at, and lots of potential ghost magnets in my library. There, I have thousands of books about the ghosts and the paranormal. I have a lot of historical artifacts in my collection. Yeah, you can see some of my historical uniforms and headgear there. Some of them from some very shady areas of history. I have KGB items from the Soviet Union. I have items from the Third Reich, from the SS and different German organizations. I collect historical worldwide police headgear and uniforms. Some of those objects have been places and seen things, sometimes maybe not very nice things. I also, in that room, I had artifacts I brought back from different haunting cases. That apartment and that room was legitimately haunted. Things have been experienced there by people. And in that photograph, you can see literally hundreds of orbs floating around. Depending on the clarity of the screen you're looking at, you see a big one glowing above the globe on the right. But in this photograph, there are hundreds, if not thousands. I took a photograph from that same position. Photograph number 1, there were no orbs. Photograph number 2, which I took as part of an experiment, I had a throw rug over the back of a chair, of a wing-back chair in there. The throw rug, which is quilted wool, attracted lots of dust. I had dust all over the house. So I went and I slapped the back of the chair. I slapped the wool throw rug, and then took another picture from the same position. Here's a blow up of them. The room was immediately filled with hundreds, of not thousands, of orbs, which are absolutely identical to the orbs from my other shots at haunted locations, and are identical to the thousands and thousands, if not millions, of orb photos on the internet. Now, yes, my apartment and this room were haunted. People have experienced things there. I experienced something there. But those orbs did not appear until I slapped the back of the chair, releasing millions of microscopic dust particles into the air, which were then floating around, and the camera flash reflected off of them. And then you have that orgy of orbs, I call it. To me, that is proof positive that the orbs are dust particles. You're not going to tell me that because I happened to slap the blanket on the back of that chair, that summoned hundreds or thousands of ghosts from the other side and all just appeared for a photograph. No, that is a mechanical process. Those are dust particles that I stirred up and snapped a photograph of.
Okay. Randy, is there supposed to be another photo, or because I'm not showing anymore? That was the last one. This was the last one.
That's probably it then.
Right. Okay. All right. Let me just...
Now, interestingly, in that room, which is the library in my old apartment, I had heard strange noises. I had felt the sense of a presence there when I was there alone once. And the thought had crossed my mind. I have all these historical artifacts, stuff I've brought back from haunted locations. Who knows what, might have latched on to something. I don't know that that actually happens, but there have been reports of stuff like that happening, including from people whose experiences I trust as being authentic. I had a friend of mine who was she won't call herself a psychic, but she is a sensitive. She can pick up on the presence of apparitions, uh, of surviving human consciousness in a location, and she sees ghosts. She sees humanoid people ghosts at different locations that no one else can see. Uh, and she's told me on different occasions, "Hey, there's somebody standing in this corner right now. Uh, I've never seen anything from my eyes, but I have gotten instrumental responses at the moment." And at the spot, she says, "Hey, there's somebody standing there." And then when she says it's gone, the instrumental responses, the needle on the tri-field meter, would die. So she was actually able to see and sense things that I couldn't. We were in that room, and she's staring at one of the bookcases, and I say, "What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, there is a glowing ball of light just floating in front of this bookcase." And she said it's glowing white. It looks about the size of a softball, and it's scaring me. Something's not right. I had a infrared digital camera in the next room. I didn't see anything with my eyes. I went and grabbed the digital infrared camera. I pointed it at that spot while she said it's still there. Turned it on. The image came on the viewfinder. I saw a glowing white ball of light that was being picked up on the infrared imager. I can't tell you how big it was because that is totally dependent on how far the camera lens is from the object. It could have been something the size of a softball or a basketball far away from me, 4 feet away from me, directly in front of the books, or it could have been a very small object right in front of the camera. So size is a matter of perspective and positioning, but it showed up on the imaging. The moment I pushed the record button on the camera, boom, it just disappeared. And she said at that moment, it's gone. So that was real. That was something anomalous. She saw it with her psychic abilities, with her mind. The camera mechanism picked it up and imaged it. The moment I pushed the shutter button to take it, I don't recall if it was on. The camera had still photo technology and video technology. I do not recall what I was trying to do. If it was going to be a still shot or a video, I just pushed the button to do something. The moment I pushed it, boom, it was gone. Uh, was it going to go away anyway at that moment? Maybe, but I think it's very suspicious, a suspicious coincidence that it disappeared the moment I was going to push the record button and capture evidence of whatever it was, and it was, and she was in tune with it completely. The moment it went blink and disappeared, and she didn't know that I saw it disappear. She wasn't looking through the camera. She said, "Oh, it's gone," and by God, it was gone. So, yes, that was a haunted room. Yes, anomalous orbs or glowing balls of light have been sensed psychically and apparently showed up on technology. Uh, but that's a totally separate type of orb than those hundreds you saw in the earlier photograph, which were dust particles.
Okay. Over the years, there's been a lot of interesting paranormal cases over the years. Name one that you would say got most of your attention.
Cases that I was not involved with,
Yes.
historical cases.
Yeah.
The one case which I think is the exemplar for this is the 1974 Culver City Doris Spither poltergeist case that I mentioned, that Thelma Moss and primarily Barry Taff and Kerry Gaynor investigated with the UCLA parapsychology lab team. Multiple witnesses to a multitude of phenomena, moving objects, vibrating pictures and mirrors on the wall, foul, horrendous smells of death, decay, and human excrement, which would appear, make everybody sick, then instantaneously disappear with no trace of the smell. Which is something that's commonly reported in poltergeist cases. If it was a real smell, if there were molecules of matter floating in the air for you to pick up with your nose, the smell would not fade away that quickly. It would be a gradual dissipation. When you have smells which appear and disappear instantly, that is an indicator of some sort of anomalous or paranormal phenomena. They had that. They had the woman, Doris Spither, claimed she was being physically attacked and claimed she was being raped by some invisible entities. The investigators never saw that, but they did see the marks and the bruises. But again, the attacks were not witnessed, so you can never rule out that it might have been self-inflicted by somebody with psychological issues. But the movement of objects, the smells, multiple, over a dozen investigators and photographers and people with PhDs from the UCLA saw these balls of light that would float around, doing circles around the woman who was the subject of the poltergeist attacks, and then they would see these balls of light zipping back and forth across the room. They saw an apparition begin to manifest. They saw forming from nothing, a pale, glowing green, luminous lime green blob start to coalesce in front of them and take on the shape of a humanoid figure with shoulders, muscular human shoulders, neck, and a bald head. Kind of like me, but paranormal. Saw this manifest right in front of them. Again, they're taking hundreds of photographs. They had multiple cameras, professional photographers they brought in. They had film cameras running. It did not show up on any of the cameras. But again, out of the thousands of shots they took, 2 or 3 of them showed the balls of light floating around in front of this woman, Doris Spither. They got other anomalous photos. Doris would say, "Oh, it's here. It's mad. It's angry that you're here. It's directly in front of me now." Kerry Gaynor, a parapsychologist who I know and I've worked with, Kerry pulled out a Polaroid camera, snapped a photograph when she said, "It's right in front of my face," and you could see a washed out white blur obliterating her face. She said, "It's gone now. It's left the room." Kerry took another photograph as a control. Same position, same shot. Her face shows up perfectly fine. That happened a couple of times when she said, "There's something standing between us." Her face was blotted out. Kerry has shown the photographs in multiple lectures and documentaries he's done. Again, multiple witnesses, physical things observed, objects moved in front of multiple witnesses. And we're not talking about pure lay amateur researchers who belong to a Saturday night ghost hunting team. We're talking about parapsychologists from the UCLA parapsychology lab, people with doctorates who are studying for doctorates or master's degrees, professional photographers, technicians, all witness this stuff. And thank goodness they are actually to get a handful of actual documentary photographs showing this. So that to me is the holy grail type of paranormal / poltergeist type event. Dr. Barry Taff has investigated several cases. One case he did, again, with similar types of phenomena, including photographic documentation of self-luminous blobs of light, orbs that are not dust particles. The case was 1979, around there, or early 80s. Uh, in California, the case is called An Unknown Encounter. It dealt with the protagonist. The victim was Jackie Hernandez. So another case similar to the entity case from '74. One of my colleagues, who I've discussed the case with, is Darren Ritson. Darren is a UK based ghost and poltergeist investigator. Darren has encountered a phenomena that has followed him from one location to the other in a contagion effect. Barry Taft calls it a psychic virus effect, that if you go to one haunted location or one poltergeist location, something can latch onto you somehow and follow you. Then the phenomena occurs at your own home or other places you visited. Darren Ritson has encountered some pretty fascinating experiences with that. Keith Linder from Bothell, Washington State. Keith Linder has had what I think are tremendous, in your face, pretty well documented poltergeist outbreaks involving spontaneous fires, destruction of objects, stuff following him and his friends around. And on the fire issue, which I think is it's relatively rare in poltergeist cases, but it's not uncommon. There are multiple cases of spontaneous fires breaking out in poltergeist cases. One that Sightings worked on is called the Sally House, or the Heartland haunting case. And Al Rauber was the initial investigator who was out there for Sightings. Then Kerry Gaynor and my friend Peter James were out there later. But in that case, there were spontaneous fires breaking out. So things like that, when there are permanent physical manipulations of the environment. It's one thing to say you saw something, felt something, heard something, but when you get a ball of light floating across your camera lens, and it's seen, and not just photographed, but seen by a dozen people in the room. When you get something burst into flames, and you can actually see the ashes and examine them. And I have some relics of cases like that. I have burnt objects, objects that were paranormally moved or manipulated. So things like that, when you can say, okay, it wasn't just in my head. It wasn't just I had some bad lobster that night and was hallucinating. Cases where you have physical evidence, photographic or otherwise, or actual burnt Bible, which was in the Keith Linder Bothell Hell House case. Stuff like that. It's the holy grail, and in parapsychology we call it a PPO, a permanent paranormal object, something that's evidence from paranormal activity, which you can hold in your hand, analyze after the fact. And then you still try to falsify it. You still try to say, not debunk, but still try to say, okay, but maybe this was caused by something else. Maybe we misinterpreted. Maybe the balls of light on the camera, on the film, or something else. But when you can't falsify it, when you explore every alternative, and you're left with something you can't explain, well, we have to accept the fact there are things out there in this world that we cannot explain.
My next question to you, Randy, is: have you written any books?
No, I've not. I've written numerous magazine articles and the magazine columns over the decades. Have not written a book. I have for several years kept a series of notebooks where I'm been jotting down notes from cases and from observations. And I have some chapter outlines done up. So hopefully before I become a ghost myself, I will have enough material organized to come out with my own book. That is one of my, as an old man who wants to leave, some sort of a permanent paranormal object behind that people can, refer to even after I'm gone. If I could, put out a book which, has, some useful commentary and observations in it. I'd like to be able to do that. So someday.
Are there any documentaries that you appeared in?
Well, several. I was in on the air on 2 or 3 sightings episodes. I've a lot of the stuff I did was behind the scenes. Same with Unsolved Mysteries and a couple other shows. I was behind the scenes analyst and consultant. I've been on several TV shows from around the world. Uh, uh, what have I been on? Trying to start a show with Chris Fleming. The name eludes me, but the one where we were at the Mae West seance was on that briefly. I've done a UK based paranormal documentary called Ghost Hunters, where we did a investigation of the oldest continually occupied house in England. So that documentary focused on me and my investigation, and different specials on MSNBC and Russian TV and French TV, which I was on because they came and filmed me, but I've not seen because I did not go to Russia or France to watch the end product.
Right. You've also wrote some articles for Fate magazine as well.
Mm-hmm. 4 or 5 over the years,
Fate
dealing
magazine.
primarily with ghost and haunting cases. Excuse me?
Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, you broke up for a second.
Okay. Yeah, I think there might be a storm rolling in. But anyway, what I was saying was, you wrote several articles for Fate magazine?
Several articles, and I was also a roving reporter, so I would send in little news bits and stuff that sometimes they would use, sometimes they wouldn't. But 4 or 5, I think 5 feature cover articles I did for them. Then I've written for several magazines over the years. Had a column in a short-lived paranormal magazine called Unknown Magazine. Then also I did a column for a magazine called Ghost Magazine. I think the column was called Ghost Hunting 101, where we discuss different facets of how to do ghost investigations every issue. So I've dabbled in the TV and writing world. I've dabbled in everything and become a master of nothing.
Okay. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Easiest way, look for my Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, just search for Randy Liebeck, Liebeck, and you can. There's a voicemail number if you want to give me a call, and my email address is there, and also Facebook Messenger I can be reached through. If you want to go to my website, it's ghosthunter.iwarp.com. That's ghosthunter.iwarp.com. And again, that links to my contact details.
Well, Randy, I'll tell you, a lot of interesting information. You've been a great guest, and I'm definitely going to have to thank Mr. Al Rober again for giving me your information to have you as a guest on the show. So, yeah, I'd like to bring you back on the show again for a part 2, in the future.
It would be my pleasure.
Great. So, yeah, that takes us to about the top of the second hour. So, Randy, again, I want to thank you for being a guest, and I want to thank you for your service. From one to another, I also was with Baltimore County Fire and Police, and I also did some high-tech security for a private agency. So you be safe out there, and thanks again for being our guest today.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure, and have an excellent evening.
You too.
From the Northwest to the Everglades, from the Southwest up to Maine. Even though he's seldom seen, everybody knows his name. Through the forests and the backwoods, folks are looking night and day, hoping for a chance to see old Bigfoot USA. Well, he's big, bad, and hairy, hangs out in the woods. No doubt he'd be scary in any neighborhood. He's the best there is at staying hid, but we're gonna find him anyway. Maybe then we can document old Bigfoot USA. He leaves tracks, scat, man, if that ain't evidence, how about hair? Banging on trees and midnight screams don't sound like no bear. Got an appetite, keeps him up all night, so he likes to chill all day. But he'll be around when the sun goes down. He's Bigfoot USA. Man ever been that fast, no man will ever be that strong. Ain't no way you're gonna whip his, so you might as well get along. He's got more names than anyone in any record book, they say. Right or wrong, they all belong to old Bigfoot USA. They call him Bigfoot, wild man, Sasquatch, stick man, cattle critter, woolly booger, mossy man, and flint man. Brush ape, skunk ape, night ape, swamp ape, grass man, wood man, gray man, and hairy man. Dog man, otter man, lizard man, raggedy man, wendigo, Seattle, Sonoqua, bush man. Wood devil, mountain devil, goat man, stone man, forest devil, big man, timber giant, brush man, ice giant, devil, monkey, boogie man, and cave monster, yellow top, skookum, and nook nook. Swamp monster, night screamer, evil seeker, catamount, Fort Worth monster, Minnesota Iceman. Stone coat, missing link, ape man, char man, big figure, stone giant, Missouri monster, elk monster, yay ho, Honey Island swamp monster, no head, no neck, tall man, boggy bill. Night people, stick, Indian, hairy, savage, owl woman, gamekeeper, splinter cat, bad smelling tree, hill monkey,